So, all you amazing people, before I go get a haircut, which is desperately needed, I'm going to talk about something that I've been thinking a little bit about, been wrapping my small, tiny human little brain around, and it's open source, free software, all of this thing. Because I feel a little bit like the people that care a lot about it are the people that it don't matter to. So before you go totally fucking batshit crazy and you go like, what are you talking about? Let's unpack this in a like analyzed way. So open source, according to Wikipedia, which is kinda okay in this case. Open source is source code that's made freely available for possible modification and redistributions. Products include permissions to use the source code, design documents, and content of the product. Really summarized, it goes further into deep to it and other licenses that are open source compatible and economics and all of that shit. But just from that, this segment right here, this little segment right here, which is open source definition, the Free Software Foundation have a little bit of a different, think about it, but the overall arc here is that open source, free software, the idea is that you should be able to look at the source code, modify the source code, give the modification back, and redistribute the software under a compatible license. So when we look at it like that, that's the fundamental idea of free software and open source. That should tell you, or at least it tells my stupid brain, that all of these things only matters to developers, or people being hobby developers, people that are helping out a project, that are doing a little bit of free time coding and stuff like that. If you are a user of any software, the license of the software, it basically don't matter to you. The only thing that matters is, can you use the software? How much does it cost? If it costs anything, and does it support the operating system that you're currently running? That's how our end user is looking at a piece of software. Is it free or not? Can I run it or not? Does it do what I need it to do? That's all 99% of people running any operating system cares about software, even the operating system itself. So again, if the idea of being able to modify the code, okay, you need to be a developer in some way or form, or understand development and code reading. Redistribute. Well, you don't need to be a developer to take someone else's work and then put it into a collection of other packages and send it out to the world, aka distributions. So yeah, you may not be a developer to do that, but you need to have a little bit of development background if you're redistributing other people's work. Why? Well, if there's a bug or problem with that code, the people that are getting it from you are going to go to you first, say, this shit is not working, please help me out, I'm losing money. And if you don't know the basics of how that program works and stuff like that, and you're just pointing the fingers and go over there and talk to these guys, you're now losing all your users because it's blatantly obvious that you have no idea what you're doing. And design documents, well, yeah, it could be interesting if you are not a developer or a coder to look at the design documents to see how they're doing the design of the software, the philosophy, the management of the software, and so on, which again leans towards developers. So in my humble opinion, just from reading these lines here, I've been saying this for 27 years when I've been a part of the open source community. The people yelling and screaming about how great open source is mostly non-developers. They have never touched a line of code. They have never reviewed a line of code. They have never done anything with the code. They have not redistributed anything. They're not looking at any design documents or whatsoever. So let me put it into a little bit of a use case here. Let's use, let's just say VLC. I think VLC is open source. I could be mistaken, but let's just say VLC. As an end user, someone like me right now that's not coding. I'm not coding right now. I have to do that later, but let's just pretend I'm just like your average Joe. I go to work, I bang a hammer to a wall, I drill some drilling work, I put stuff up on a wall, I go home and I enjoy my Linux machine. I am a fan of VLC, I like what it does, so I use it to view media. For me, the license of that piece of software means nothing. What means something to me is, can I get it on my system? Can I get it on Linux? Oh yeah, I can. Cool. Does this thing cost me any money? No. Cool. That's it. It could have been locked down, the most proprietary software on earth. I will still be using it as an end user because it ticks all the boxes. Okay? That's how people look at it. And I know people say, oh, well, then we can look at the code and see if telemetry is being taken and stuff like that. Well, you don't need to look at the code to see if telemetry is being taken. Case in point, Windows. People have been dissecting Windows for years and figuring out what it does and don't do without looking at the source code. You don't need to look at the source code to understand what a program does. Why you need to look at the source code is to understand how it does it. So you can look at a car and say, yep, it's driving, it's turning, it's stopping, it's accelerating. You don't need to understand the physics, the mechanics and stuff that behind those things. You don't need to know how an internal combustion engine work or diesel engine work. You don't need to understand how an electrical car works. You don't need to understand, the kinetic and potential energy in the braking system and all that shit. You can see and observe that a car's driving towards a stoplight, a fucking drunk-ass bitch is running over the road, it's janking on the brakes and it's stopping. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need to be a mechanic to understand those simple terms. The same with software. You don't need to be a developer to observe what a software do if you know how to monitor software. So again, this thing, we need to see if the source code, if it's doing anything bad. No, you don't. You observe the software. And there are tools that can help you do that and blah, 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 blah. So again, the only people where open source really matter to are people developing, people that are managing developments and stuff like that. And if you're not one of those people, it has no impact on your life whatsoever. I think why people, and I don't think this, I kind of have drawn that conclusion. I may be massively wrong here, but this, look at the Linux community and the free and open source community, the BSD community, and even the Windows community and the Mac community about using open source and free software. What my conclusion is that most people, 99% of those people that are advocating for open source and free software, that are not developers and have never touched or looked at a line of code in any productional manner or productive manner whatsoever, they only like it because they think that because it's open source and free software, it will not cost them any money. AKA, I like free shit, bitches. That's why they're liking it. They think that if Linux became closed source, if, let's say, Linux became limited open source like Vivaldi is, where you need to basically sign an NDA and we have a cloudy weather outside, so the light is going all over the place. Anyway, limited open source, meaning that you can look at the source code, you can get back, you can just redistribute and modify it. It will still be Linux, because here's how the world works. Here's how the real world works. The license don't really matter that much other for developers, potential distributors and stuff like that. If you're not a developer, the license is a way to either protect or not protect the code for things that you may want it to happen to it. If you're opening up, you are like, well, maybe the community can help me out. Maybe someone can help me out. Or if you're locking it down, you can be like, well, this line of code is the whole basis of my fucking business, and I don't want anyone to copy this because I'll be out of business. So therefore, we are locking it down. Those are the only people that the license is about. You, as the janitor, the building maintenance, the mechanic, the soldier, the policeman, whatever you are in the world, garbage collector, nurse, doctor, for you, as long as the system is doing what you want it to do, allowing you to do what you wanted to do, run the things you wanted to do, the license don't give a fuck. And there are so many limited open source, I don't know if that's the term, but limited open source software out there like Vivaldi. There's a lot of closed source programs out there that are free and are used on both Linux and Windows and Mac OS and all other operating systems. Has been free to use forever, or are free with a few little limitations that really don't matter for the vast majority of users. Like a really good example here could be DaVinci Resolve. The license don't matter. That there's almost no there are open source bits to it, but for the most part it's a closed source software, and you see all kind of users recommend that software on all pieces of operating systems and in all pieces of philosophies of the code. Why? Because in the end, open source and this thing over here only matters for developers, people that are actively going in and meddling with the code. It's a little bit like saying that you care about the work method of taking out an engine of a Ford Raptor, for example, and you care about the tools the mechanic use. You care about the clothes the mechanic wear. You have ideas and philosophies why they should use X, Y, and Z and do X, Y, and Z, while never, ever, ever in your life have opened the bonnet or hood of a car, even fucking changed the spark plug, never got your hands dirty. You have basically no idea what that big fucking metal lump of things are doing inside that compartment. But still, you know exactly how they should do their thing. You are telling them exactly how to conduct themselves in a working manner towards changing the engine. What to use, not to use, how to do it, and how not to do it. You care about that. And frankly, to be honest, to be like massively honest here, it's batshit crazy. It's like a Karen going into a shop telling the chef or the manager how to run their business while having no fucking experience or any inclination of helping out whatsoever. When I see a lot of open source advocates or free software advocates talking about the capabilities of being able to see the source code and blah blah yada 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 yada, and I'm like, when was the last time you did anything with the code? Oh, I've never done it. Then shut your mouth, because you are like a Karen right now. You are telling how professional people should be doing their work while you have never done it or have no fucking inclination helping out. So basically, you don't have the authority, in my opinion, or the right, in my opinion, to tell other people how to do their work. Because if you're going as an open source or free software advocate, you're going into a proprietary software development studio or development team and bitching and moaning about it should be open source and stuff like that. This is no different from you going into an apartment store or a grocery store, a restaurant, and yelling and screaming about how they're managing the restaurant, how they should get their food, where they should get their food from. This is no different. I sadly see in the development world, at least with open source and free software, is that the people that have no fucking idea how this world works are the ones yelling and screaming the most and telling the people that know how this world works how to do their job. Sounds a lot like a Karen or Kevin to me. I'm just putting it out there. Most people that are bitching and moaning about this open source thing, even from a moral and philosophical way, have no fucking like reasons to do so, because it don't matter to them. The only reason, in my opinion, why they're doing it is because they are afraid that if the software they like or the system they like became limited or closed source, it would not be free anymore, and they now have to pay money to use it. And I know, again, you will say, well, we can fork it then, and that's great. I will agree with you. When was the last time you forked a project? Oh, other people can fork it. Yep, that's true. But other people have also forked, developers have forked proprietary software. Because again, if you know coding and you can see how a program behave, you can reverse engineer a lot of that shit. That's basically how we got, IBM PC clones back in the 80s. That's how we're getting emulators nowadays. That's how we are getting, RISC OS, the Windows 95 NT compatible system. To some degree, that's how Haiku is being made, by reverse engineering a lot of BSD code, or BOS code, that was not open source, and talking to the developers. That's not under an NDA anymore. The only benefit of forking an open source project is that you don't need to reverse engineer. You can just basically copy paste. Way faster, way easier. So yes, open source makes forking easier and faster, but not impossible. Again, we're diving into more complex programs. It becomes more complex. Does open source and free software really fucking matter to you? If you're not a developer, if you're not a project manager, if you're not a development studio, I will go out on a limb and giving my balls on a plate to you and say, no, it don't. See you all later. Bye-bye.